to Legally Speaking with me, Tarun Nangia. Today, we're going to discuss a very, very interesting topic that in online gaming, what constitutes game of skill? That is part one. In part two, we will also discuss, should games of skill, how should they be taxed? And as far as betting revenue is concerned, should it be be charged on gross revenue or net revenue? That is also what we'll delve into. Of course, the GST Council is going to discuss this issue. There is a committee that is already going over this. The survival of a whole industry and investment in India depends on this, how GST is charged on online gaming. But first, we'll have to establish what is a game of skill, and that is what we're going to start with today. I have a very eminent panel who has joined me today evening. May I welcome Sameer Chugh. He is a general counsel with Games 24/7, one of the India's largest company in the online gaming industry. He will give us the industry point of view. Good to see you again, Sameer, and looking forward to some interesting interventions from you. I have with me Mahesh Agarwal, managing partner of Agarwal Law Associates, one of India's leading law firms at the Supreme Court of India, who also does a lot of these matters for online gaming companies. Good to see you, Mr. Agarwal, and looking forward to some interesting insights. I have with me Ruby Ahuja. Ma'am is senior partner with Karanjawala and Company, one of India's leading litigation law firms at the Supreme Court of India, who also does a lot of these matters for online gaming companies. Good to see you, ma'am, and looking forward to some interesting insights from you on this issue. At the outset, may I request Sameer that in about the next 2 minutes, if he lays the ground for this issue, explains it, and then we move ahead with the finer points. Over to you, Sameer.
Thank you, Tarun. Wonderful to be here. And hi, Mahesh. Hi, Ruby. To give a background here of the the online gaming industry, I think it can be really turned around and put in two simple buckets. What is it that is a game of skill, and what is it that is a game of chance? If you see, from the perspective of, the history of jurisprudence, right from 1957, when the RMDC, the Chamar Bagwala cases happened, and then followed by then the Lakshmanan, the Satyanarayan, and the various high court judgments over the last year, 2 years. The whole, piece around game of skill versus game of chance has again been reopened, and it's been time and time again held, which also has an impact on how the industry can be taxed from a GST perspective. Clearly, there are two parts. There is gambling betting, which turns around and is more involved with the game of chance, versus a game of skill, which is purely games which are played on the basis of skill. They are predominantly skill-based games, and that is what are to be taxed in a different way. Now, the law also clearly provides that a game of skill is to be taxed on the gross gaming revenue, versus a game of chance will fall within the betting gambling, and therefore it could be turned around and taxed on the whole amount that is there. I think that is really the background to this, sir.
Okay, thanks for laying the ground for and settling the issue. I'll go across to Mr. Mahesh Agarwal, managing partner of Agarwal Law Associates, for making the initial intervention. Over to you, Mr. Agarwal.
See, I'll tell you what has happened over so many years, that the whole concept of playing a game has changed. Earlier, as we see, our parents, friends, etc., used to go to a club, go to a room and play rummy. They used to go to a friend's house on a weekend and play a game of rummy or a game of sweep, or whatever it is. With the advent of electronic world, you have a phone and you have an app. The people are playing rummy from wherever they are. But the concept remains the same. So the concept is the same, that instead of going and playing in a room, you are playing in a platform provided by a entity like Gamescraft or 24/7 or Dream11. So the concept is the same. The game is the same. The rules are the same. Only thing which is happening is that the platform is changing. Now, with the platform changing, what is happening is that the number of people playing this game has exponentially increased.
Yes.
Therefore, you see every day now, there are so many established players in the market and new players coming every day who are providing this platform for people to play. With more and more people playing, the revenues are increasing. And the government is obviously looking at a place where they can tax and earn revenue. So that is why something which has been settled over 60 years as to what is a game of skill And what is a game of chance is being opened again, reopened. It is settled by multiple judgments, but the government is just not accepting it because they do not want to lose this huge revenue. Now, what is happening as a result of that is that there is so much uncertainty in business, investments are at risks, people do not know whether to join an online company, etc. The difference in the taxation which the government wants to do and which is legitimately possible is so vast that the difference between a company doing business with profit or closing down. So therefore, it is essential that this issue should now get quietus. The judgments of the courts, which have, there are 3 high courts or 4 high courts which have held that game of rummy is a game of skill. 3 courts which have held that Dream 11, where you play kind of cricket on a thing, on an app, is a game of skill. They're just not being accepted. The Supreme Court has time and again held what's the difference between game of skill and game of chance. It's not being accepted. So it is high time that the government accepts the definition laid down by the court and let the business prosper.
Yeah, because in the pursuit of more taxation, we shouldn't kill the industry. Thanks for simplifying it for the viewer, Mr. Agarwal. I'll go across to Ruby Ahuja, senior partner with Karanjawala and Company. You've been looking at these matters for quite some time now. Could you share with us the experience or what issues have come up? And in your view, what is the solution?
Thank you, Tarun. Good evening.
You're not audible.
Sorry. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone and good evening to your viewers. So Tarun, as Mahesh rightly said, that the whole this issue started cropping up, if I remember correctly, that there was a game of rummy which was being played in a club. So Madras club case had landed before Supreme Court after Chamar Bagh Wala and everything. And that time this issue again started, that whether rummy, actually it started with rummy, whether rummy is a game of skill or a game of chance. Then to shorten it, in that time, the online rummy industry was growing. There were only 2-3 players, if I remember. And I still remember talking to one of them who said that I just want to survive for 5 years and then I will probably exit the business only. Nobody expected at that time that, this industry will, grow so much. And I can tell you that player is still there doing very well. So then this whole issue came and the court that time said that, look, you cannot treat, just because somebody is playing a game of rummy on a computer or a laptop, it doesn't become a game of chance. And now as history speaks or the years have passed, all courts have said that game of skill, even if it has a minuscule percentage of chance, it doesn't become betting. Because it has been argued again and again that, in rummy, there is game of chance. In Ludo, there is some skill chance involved. So these are betting. And I always maintain that if rummy and Ludo are becoming game of chance completely, then so is life. And so is sometimes appearing in court. Because the chance ingredient will always stay in human health. Anyway, coming back, I think this whole issue of taxation, which they want to do and say that, look, if we are going to term you now as betting, and I'm going to ask you to pay 28% tax, then what you're basically doing, I think government is itself not clear as to where they are going. On one hand, Karnataka government came up with this regulation, with this act, that betting is not allowed. And then this whole issue came, Karnataka High Court judgment has come, online industry has won rummy and everybody had appeared there, and now the matter is coming before the Supreme Court. If you are saying betting is not allowed, then how do you tax on betting? I do not understand. If you're saying that I will ask betting industry to pay 28% tax, then that industry has to become valid first of all. So you have to first close that topic and then only you can impose something like 28%, which I don't think so. There is any logical reason. There is an argument that is an actionable claim. It is not. It is a mere provision of an industry. If suppose tomorrow, if this logic is clear, then a hotel, if somebody is sitting at the bar and playing a game of rummy, and somebody wins 50,000, now then person also then the hotel also has to pay 27%, because only the medium is different. So I think the problem is that because the industry is growing so much, government also wants to extract. And my own view is government doesn't want to shut it. Government wants some sort of more tax from this industry. And maybe a time will come that these whole acts and ordinances which are coming time and again, reopening this issue, this will close down sooner than later. But I don't think so this taxation issue will close down, even if the Supreme Court gives the judgment in the pending petitions right now from Chennai and Karnataka. I think there'll be another round which the online industry will have to take. So I think they are in for a long haul.
So this is now going in for some more time. And Dr. Singhvi was arguing in one of these matters, that is Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi. He said that online rummy is a game of skill, and said that physical and online rummy are identical. How is it different? It is just an online meeting versus a physical meeting. The construct is the same. Only the base changes, as also Ma'am Ruby Ahuja said. I'll go across to Samir Chugh, General Counsel from Games 24/7. Can you explain this further with some examples so that it becomes clear, and also why these hurdles and how are they impacting the industry? Because every time there is this kind of a hurdle, I think investment in the industry slows down a bit, because people want things to settle in before investing money in this sector. Over to you, Mr. Samir.
Absolutely, Tarun. You're absolutely right. And Ruby's absolutely right. There is no difference between a game of rummy that is played offline and that is played online. If you go back to the jurisprudence again, and I'm kind of saying that there is already a skill that there is already a test that has been laid down, which is that in a game of rummy, for example, it has been termed as a game of skill because you have to memorize cards, you have to see the flow of cards, you have to pick the right card, and then you have to discard the right card. Yeah. So the only piece which is very random is right at the beginning when the cards are dealt. Now those cards are also dealt by way of a random number generator technology, which is an algorithm which is acceptable globally, and that's only to keep it very, very, as I would say, neutral for all the players. But post that, pretty much what you do in an offline rummy and what you do online is same. As rightly said, the only thing that changes is probably you're sitting around a table. Here you're sitting on your phone, sitting with your phone, and you're playing with players there. The same rules apply. All of that is there. The cards that are discarded are visible. What comes up is you can pick up the card. You can have the choice to pick up the card from the discarded deck or a fresh card which is upside down. So there is no change at all. So therefore, this is something which is a complete misnomer, where people have been saying, or rather I've heard this from, some of the learned members of the bar who were arguing in this particular matter as well, where they're saying that, oh, it's very different. No, it is not. And in fact, that is a huge fallacy that needs and ought to be corrected. That's one. And therefore, kind of the second point that I will come to is that when you look at, again, kind of the impact on the industry. Now, this is a legitimate industry. It is protected under 19(1)(g), and it attracts a lot of investment. And if you look at today, this industry is bound to become a $20 billion industry by 2030. And today we already have close to about 15,000 crores of FDI into this. Now, every time where there is an uncertainty that is, kind of created, and where, kind of you start to question the basics again, it reaches a point where foreign investors do say, how do I get certainty? And therefore they do slow down, and therefore they don't want to invest in this business. Clearly, I think it is a huge loss for the country, where this is one industry which can attract billions and billions of dollars in the near future. So every single court matter that comes up like this, every time a tax authority starts to, kind of levy tax in this manner, there is a huge shake of confidence of the foreign investor that's going to happen, which automatically means that somewhere we are hurting our own self.
Okay. We also saw Senior Advocate Mukul Rohatgi and Senior Advocate Arvind Datar argue in one of the industry bodies. And yes, the point that came out time and again, as the panel has articulated, that, for example, online rummy is a game of skill and not a game of chance. That has also been held by the court. Yes. Do you think a court direction is needed to this effect, so that, or do you think it is at the policy level that you will find a solution? Can you just give your opinion before I go to Mr. Agarwal?
I think it needs both. Unless the court says so, I'm not sure how the government will take a policy decision. Unless they are convinced, please take a policy decision. You won't need the courts to say this, which is already something that's out there.
Okay. I'll go to Mr. Mahesh Agarwal, Managing Partner of Agarwal Law Associates. Mr. Agarwal, in one of the matters, we saw 21,000 crores being demanded as along with interest, which was the total tax demand. what do you think is the solution, or do you think this will need an out of the box solution, which is aside GST, besides GST, something else? What could that be? Could you delve into that, please? Because
See, I think the solution is already there in the judgment which have been given by the Supreme Court so far. For the benefit of all, I just read out in very simple words the definition of gambling and game of skill as given by the Supreme Court itself.
Okay.
It's very easy and the viewers will understand immediately.
Yes.
Gambling involves not only chance, but of a hope of gaining something beyond the amount played. Gambling consists of consideration, an element of chance, and a reward. Gambling in a nutshell is payment of a price for a chance to win a prize. That's as simply as one can define gambling. What's a game of skill? A game of skill, on the other hand, is one in which success depends principally upon the superior knowledge, training, attention, experience, adroitness of the player. Golf, chess, and even rummy are considered to be games of skill. The Supreme Court has laid out in such simple words. Now, this has been repeated time and again. So all that the government has to possibly do is make a committee, go to the law which is laid down, see the definition which has been laid down by the Supreme Court, and apply to specific sets of games which are being played online. So, for example, a simpler case would be chess. Can it be said that chess is a game of chance? What does chess need? Experience, practice, knowledge, patience. All elements of skill are there in a game of chess. Now, you can play a game of chess online also. Now, there is any game of skill would naturally have an element of some chance. So one can say if A wins the game of chess, I'll pay this much, and if B wins, that may pay something more. Now, so game of skill can easily be said to be a game of chance, but you have to see essentially what are the elements, what are the parts employed for the purpose of playing that game. So the definitions which have been given by the court, if they're applied the way it is, I think the things will fall into place. So say rummy or chess. Now take an example of Flash, what we call as Teen Patti, and everybody plays in Diwali. That's pure chance. The cards are played to you, cards are given to you. There is no mind applied except somebody will pay 100 rupees, somebody will pay 200, but you can't do anything with the cards. You don't have to play combinations, you don't have to discard, you don't have to pick up. There is no skill involved other than pure chance. So in the game of cards itself, there are issues which are pure game of chance and pure game of skill. So that is something which has to be followed.
I want to follow up question very quickly, if you can answer this. See, many new companies will enter this, in a sense, sector, and they will have different kind of games. So do you think every time a government committee will sit and look into what is a game of skill, game of chance, then how should they be taxed? Do you think there should be some solution to this upcoming problem also?
Yeah, solution can be by way of some regulations or some criteria or some elements which can be laid down, that if these elements are there in a particular game, it becomes a game of chance. And if these elements are not there, it is a game of skill. For example, like the Supreme Court has said, if a particular game requires experience, training, some kind of mental application, and not merely on what somebody else is doing, those elements can be laid down and applied to every particular game. And then it can be said whether it's a game of skill or game of chance.
Okay, point well taken. I'll take the same question to Ma'am Ruby Ahuja, senior partner from Karanjawala and Company. Ma'am, can you delve into this issue a bit? And do you think we need any out-of-the-box solution, since the government is also looking at revenue, or will it only come from the GST Council? Of course, that this issue is going to be deliberated in the upcoming meeting.
I'll tell you, Tarun, where the problem is there. The problem lies somewhere else, that there is when any game or any business is categorized as betting and gambling, state gets the power to regulate that business.
Yes.
So it is also a tussle between center and state.
Right.
Now, even if center comes up with regulation, and there has been an argument that why don't you, this will come under entry of trade and commerce and cannot come under entry of betting and gambling. So the states are also keep on coming with their own regulation with the act. The act is stuck down. Tamil Nadu has come up with an ordinance now. So there are only two ways as I look at it. Either the Supreme Court has to give the judgment once for all and close this issue, That is one way. Or the center will have to work with the state, because I don't see it happening that state are going to allow the center to give away their domain, because the only way they want to control this industry is because they keep on categorizing it as betting and gambling. And then you have this very naive arguments, according to me, to say that, this is betting, children get exposed to it, children are playing it 24/7. So on, so forth, which we all know that, it's not possible. All these highly complicated softwares are, very regulated. That's a, argument for another day. So to answer your question very specifically, I think my own take is, once for all, the Supreme Court will have to decide. But there also, even the court may have a little bit problem, because there are certain games which are being played online today, which will be maybe a little difficult for the Supreme Court to say that these are game of skill and you can't bring them under betting. Like Mahesh said, chess. Now you can't compare chess and poker, according to me. But somebody who's a poker player will say, no, why not? Because I am, my skill is there. So if even chess has an element, as I told you. So, it's very difficult. It's a very fine line. So whenever, even if you're saying even a 1% chance is there, then you become betting. Then I think it's not a good way of looking at things.
I take your point.
And also the industry sometimes gets divided also on this.
Okay.
Let me tell you, even the online industry gets divided on this. There are players like, who are doing rummy. There are players who are doing, cricket, which they say that ours is a completely different thing, like Dream 11. And also there the problem lies. So maybe center also will have to speak to the players. Center will also have to, or maybe bring a regulatory body or licensing of online games. That is one way of looking at things.
You made 2 points: the regulatory body and licensing of online games. I'll take it to Sameer Chugh, GC of Games 24/7. Can you explain this to me? You understand this ecosystem well. They maybe say a dozen companies coming tomorrow. A lot of Indian businessmen may want to put in money in this sector. So a dozen companies may bring out 3 dozen games. Who in the government will decide what is a game of skill? Do you think from the industry perspective, is the regulator an answer? Should a regulator will sit in judgment, or should it be just certain laid down standards according to which the companies themselves will decide and then apply, what is a game of skill? Because you give it to a regulator, things also slow down, because then that is that own system. It also increases hurdles. If some new startup comes in with a certain game and it is, they say it is a game of chance, then that startup dies its own death very quickly. Do you think it should be self-governed, where the companies will be able to decide, or the government on each and every game will adjudicate, or a regulator? Can you clear what is the industry expectation in this issue?
Sure. So see, Tarun, I think it is important to be very clear and open here. If we put a government regulator out there,
yes,
I think that will stifle the industry. It is important if you want this industry to grow. We are very happy with regulations. We are very, very, kind of in for regulations to be there. We have in fact proposed to the government time and again, please regulate if you have to. You can't do a prohibition here. So therefore, regulation is the answer. But the regulations cannot be so intense that it stifles the industry. These have to be light touch regulations. Our view there has always been that you turn around and put regulations, put a SRO here. We are happy with an SRO, which is a self-regulating organization. It can be the entity that turns around and looks at the games for across the board and then says that, okay, this falls within game of skill, game of chance. Yes, the definitions of game of skill and a game of chance should be clearly laid out. And then let the SRO turn around and kind of lay them there and examine people according to it. The larger issue here is also the fact that there is a whole lot of illegal operators that are sitting outside of India and operating these games. Now, there is a whole bunch of legitimate, kind of entities like ours. And then there is a whole lot of these illegal entities which indulge in gambling and betting sitting outside of the country. Therefore, the SRO should also have the ability to turn around and say which are these illegal operators which cannot operate in the country. And therefore, if the industry has to grow, a self-regulating organization, a light touch regulation, and really turning around and taking away the illegal operators is the answer to this. Industry will grow, so will the revenue, so will the country, because ultimately the gaming industry is going to be the backbone of what we call as a $1 trillion digital economy.
You made a very good point that gaming industry is going to be the backbone, but that apart, you said regulation, but no regulator. So you should have
Yes.
regulation, but no regulator. I'll go to Mr. Mahesh Agarwal, Managing Partner, Agarwal Law Associates on this.
So I also feel that all we need is a proper, clear policy document or regulations which can be applied. If there's a dispute, you can go to a court. Now, what has to be seen is that in the last few years, the kind of investments which have been made in this business is huge. It is giving huge amount of employment. You have a boost in the business of mobile phones, boost in the business of telephony, boost in the business of internet. Now, so you are basically increasing your GDP growth even with these companies, correct? Now, with even if you apply the percentage which the gaming companies want the government to push, that is 18% on the net proceeds or on the gaming amount or the pot,
GGM.
that is also huge. That is going up substantially. Now, what will happen is that in case you try to impose what has happened with Gamecraft, 21,000 crore demand, it's completely crazy. How can a company be lumped with a demand of 21,000 crore and be expected to pay? It is sure shot death, man. Now, if you kill all these businesses, what is going to happen is investments will lose. Businessmen will lose the investment. There'll be people who are employed, gainfully employed and doing so much work here will lose. Everybody will lose. What's the point? So the idea is when the law is so certain already, the interest of all stakeholders must be to protect the industry. What has happened in the dot-com business, there was a boom and then there was a bust. Same thing happened with startup. Nowadays, it's very difficult for a new startup to survive. Today, fortunately, we have these gaming businesses which are surviving and doing so much business, giving so much employment and revenue to the state. There is no reason why it should be killed when the law is so certain. I would give an example. You know, Ruby also mentioned, a client comes to me, I prepare a case to be filed. The first question he asks is, sir, what is my chance of success? Correct? It happens every day. Now, especially with the foreign clients, you'll be surprised to know, foreign clients would send an email. Forget talking, they'll send an email. Please, Mr. Agarwal, tell me what is the chance of success. Now, what do you say? But still, we assess on our own with the whatever experience and expertise we have, give something to the merit, something to this and that, and say 60%, 70%. Does it mean that filing a case or arguing a case becomes a game of chance? It's absurd. Now, similarly, playing a proper game where you're applying your mind, applying your skill, can it be said to be a game of chance? Every possible game of skill definitely will have some element of chance. Now, that has to be recognized and that has to be followed.
I'll take the same issue to Ma'am Ruby Ahuja, senior partner with Karanjawala and Company. Ma'am, regulation but no regulator. Do you think this will be a tricky one to execute? Because you know this is a sector which will have hundreds of players eventually. Because gaming is something which a young bunch of people with a little money can start. Of course, what traction it gets is different, but these things can be done with few innovative individuals. Do you think that some out-of-the-box solution is in order on this one? Because, you know, if you have suddenly 100 companies, to regulate them also becomes an issue. Could you also explain us what this entails in future?
See, I'll tell you, government has to do only one thing, bring certainty. As it is required to bring, so which is good for the industry. You can't kill this goose, which is, you know, like right now laying golden eggs for you. To find this very attractive industry, and now, as Mahesh said, you want to impose tax liability of 21,000 crore. I mean, what message are you giving to the world? I mean, in America, during COVID, online industry increased by 21% in 2 years because people were sitting at home. They are not killing the industry. Why are we killing the industry? So maybe the answer is, of course, courts must step in. Supreme Court must step in and close this issue once for all. It shouldn't come a situation like what Karnataka is trying to do, that now suddenly Rummy and other games have become betting. Even after the judgment they have lost, now you pay 27% tax. Second point is regulation. I'm saying regulate and don't prohibit. Please do not prohibit, regulate and regulate in advance. If, for want of a better word, it will be something like advance income tax ruling. If somebody is doing only Rummy, online Rummy, and if he knows or the entity knows in advance that I am a legal valid entity, of course there'll be no problem in foreign investment. All problem is that suddenly some in a small district, even in Delhi, I know many players who say that we get a call from the local thana at night, ji aapke against a complaint hai, aapke isme jua chal raha tha. Frankly, this has happened. I can't give you name, but this is happening. So, once for all, if government says, no, this is legal, at least this will stop. So why can't you say it in advance? But I'm again saying this will not happen at center level unless and until center takes states, because states do not want to lose control over this industry as well. So I think that is the answer. Regulate, and please, people will know whether their business is valid, legal business or not. Are you categorizing it as a game of skill, or are you categorizing it as a game of chance? And if they are unhappy with that categorization, they will go and file a case before the High Court or Supreme Court. So I don't think so it is that difficult to do. I mean, legislature has many experts who can help this situation.
Thanks for sharing that. I'll go across to Sameer Chok from Games 24/7. Sameer, can we, the industry self-regulate itself in this, where they can themselves, if there is a pre-set parameter, which, for example, a set of forms which they fill in explaining why their game is a game of skill, and that could become the template on which companies could apply and start, functioning. And later, of course, if somebody finds something, they can complain. This will reduce, in a sense, concentration with the state and unnecessary, in a sense, problems which are hurdles to business. Because, in a sense, currently it looks like the industry is being stifled.
Absolutely, Tarun, which is why I said regulate, but no regulator. That's why I said put an SRO. See, an SRO has to be the body which is able to turn around and implement the regulations in a way. So essentially, if you put a regulator out there who will then turn around and further interpret what the regulations are, that's a disaster. On the other hand, if we can put clear regulations, we put an SRO, the SRO will turn around and take care of regulating the industry and ensuring that the regulations are followed. Now, let me tell you one more thing. As an industry today, we already follow a whole lot of that today. So we have what we call as a responsible gameplay. We have a fair play that we do. So today, I mean, to give you an example, we ourselves get the e-gaming federation actually has put on rules which require all its members to be audited on a yearly basis, to turn around and continue to be as part of the fair play, and as part of the fair play gaming company. Now, also to give you another example, the whole RNG, right? The random number generator, it is certified by iTech Labs. So there are other, further things that have been put into our systems. For example, we monitor addiction. So there are, ways to turn around and see if there are players are going towards addiction. We actually turn around and put a stop on their playing for a period between 24 hours to 6 months. So all these things exist. And therefore, all we are saying is that in addition to all of that we do, if we can put all of this into clear regulations, put an SRO on top, happily we'll be, turning around, contributing to the country in a much more meaningful manner.
Thanks for explaining this. We need to see what happens in the upcoming GST Council meeting, where things will be deliberated upon, and that is when we'll again take up the issue, because in this meeting there is definitely going to be some outcome. What outcome that is, which will decide the further course of action for the industry also. Now we are joined by Advocate Rohan Shah, one of the leading lawyers of this country, who have also argued a lot of matters on and about the gaming industry, also on the GST front, as well as on the issue of game of skill. At the outset, I would like to request him that if he would share with us the whole concept of game of skill in parlance with what's happening in the online gaming industry. Over to you, Mr. Shah.
Thank you, Tarun. Yeah, I think, this distinction between a game of skill and a game of chance is something which has been interpreted in a series of different situations, right? And historically, one of the earliest judgments which it looked at that was the Chamar Bagwala judgment. And you were looking in the context of a fact scenario as to whether playing a crossword would effectively be a game of skill or a game of chance. And the fact that there was a prize was, of course, one of the considerations. And courts, having gone into this, have really gone into the aspect of saying that if the result which you will get from your participation is dependent in a measure on the skills you have in undertaking that particular activity, then what you are dealing with is a situation where there is a game of skill, and this needs to be distinguished very clearly from a situation where, irrespective of the nature of your skill, the outcome is dependent purely on factors external to your skill in relation to that particular activity. So, broadly the divide sort of has been that having considered this in Chamar Bagwala, then there was occasion to sort of consider it in the context of both Rummy and then in the context of horse racing. And you had the, different judgments, Madras Race Club, etc., which considered these. And on a consideration, the pivotal issue was that the outcome is certainly dependent upon the skill of the participant. And if the outcome is dependent upon the skill of the participant, then it's a game of skill. Let's say you distinguish that from, some other activity, which is purely based on chance, where skill is either marginal or irrelevant. So therefore, let's say, in a distinct situation, buying of a lottery ticket, or, in several countries, you have the larger lotto and, other situations where you go buy a ticket and it's just purely chance that the number of the ticket you have is drawn and sort of wins you some amount of money. So I think through a series of judgments, this has evolved as the definitive test. And having been tested first in crosswords, then in the context of racehorses and, betting on horse racing, then in the context again of Rummy, I think there has been a far more recent exposition in the context of the online gaming industry. And in that particular exposition, we have the high courts in Mumbai, we have Punjab and Haryana, we have Bangalore and Karnataka. And then, Mumbai and Punjab and Haryana goes up to the Supreme Court. And again, the situation is on the appraisal of those facts. The view which was taken at the High Court and then endorsed by the Honorable Supreme Court was that in the nature of these games or activities, the element of skill is definitely a factor of influence in terms of the outcome. And if the element of skill influences the outcome, then you regard it as a game of skill distinguished from a game of chance.
If you could share with the viewers with an example, for example, can you compare, say, chess, rummy, and flash, 3 different kind of games? What would be a game of skill and what would be a game of chance?
Look, I mean, let's take each of these, right? And maybe best illustrated, let's say your chess and your flash analogy. Now, chess, sort of the outcome is very heavily dependent upon the training, the study, and the performance of a particular player in the course of a game. And there will be people who might sort of wager or play for the fact that the outcome may be that some money is exchanged. But the element of skill is what is going to influence the outcome, right? Now, equally, let us look at Rummy or, other card games. The determinant in terms of the result is, in a manner, yes, you will have the skill of the player as a very essential ingredient of what the outcome will be. So one way of testing it would be that with the same hand, a player of a certain capability is capable of winning, whereas a player of a lesser capability will probably end up losing. Now, if therefore the element and application of skill determines the outcome, then your characterization would be as a game of skill. Well, whereas opposed to that, you go to a street corner lottery vendor, you effectively buy a ticket. And everything is really then dependent upon a completely fortuitous issue in terms of whether that number comes or doesn't come, and whether you happen to then hold the ticket which wins the prize.
Point very well taken. Now, coming on the issue of GST, now we saw that companies were slapped with income tax, the notices of GST of 21,000 crores or 22,000 crores by the Directorate General of GST Intelligence, if I'm not wrong. What I want to know from you, should GST be charged on the entire betting value, what money people have bet, or it should be charged on the net income that the company earns? And this is a bit confusing for many. So could you explain it simply?
Yeah, so let's understand this first in the context of the provision and the practicality. It's important to understand that the gaming company is essentially offering a platform, which platform is a service. On that, they could host a series of games and participants could effectively play, right? Now, the structure effectively is that a participant who effectively wants to play will have to pay a fee. And to the extent that the outcome is remunerated by some sort of reward, which is monetary, different people will contribute money to play. This is gathered into a pool, and this pool is as a fiduciary responsibility held by the company, and every participant knows that the ultimate winner will be paid a finite predetermined amount of money. So let us say the situation is that the pool of collection for one game is ₹1,00,000. It's well known that the winner will effectively get, let's say, 95,000 rupees. The 5,000 rupees will be the retention by the gaming company in terms of everything it does for the purposes of creating its site and hosting these different games, creating the payment gateways, etc. Now, the situation is that the levy of GST would be either on the supply of goods or services, and the levy is essentially on the value of the service. Now, if you see the value of the service, or what we would call the net retention of the service provider, quite clearly it's 5,000 rupees. The attempt is to levy the entire 1,00,000 rupees, which has effectively been collected from the participants, to the GST. Now, the first situation is there is a provision, Rule 31A, which creates a deemed fiction to say that in certain types of activities, namely actionable claims, where there is betting, gambling, etc., horse racing, the amount which you collect or the total amount collected will then be taxed at 100%. Now, the first issue is, to my mind, this rule is ultra vires section 15, because section 15, which is the valuation provision, only allows you to tax the value of the service. And that correlates to the charging section, which only allows you to tax the service. So you can only tax the service, and you can only tax, therefore, the value of the service. If in this example, 5,000 is the value of the service, there is no rational basis to tax it at the 1,00,000. Now, to the extent that this provision of Rule 31A therefore exists, A, to my mind, it's ultra vires section 15. It's also ultra vires the charging provision. Now, you can also see the distortive effect this has. In this particular case, which is now before the Bangalore High Court, the tax which is sought to be recovered is 21,000 crores. The total turnover of the company is 4,000 crores. Now, therefore, what you're seeing is that if this formula is applied, we are going to lead to a completely arbitrary and a completely fantastical basis where you say that although your earning is 5, I will presume it to be 100 and effectively tax you at 100. Or that 100 has no nexus with the service, because what has nexus with the service is the 5 rupees, which is brought to the charge of tax. So this basis to say that I will charge everything, to my mind, is completely distortive of the basic scheme of taxation of GST. And the factor that it is distortive is illustrated by the fact that if I earn 4,000 crores, and 4,000 crores is, let us say, the earning or the net retention, but my tax liability is at a 5 multiple of what is my earning. Now, there is no business in the world which could sustain a system of what is an indirect tax at a 5 multiple of what is really the value that they realize for the purpose of their business. In effect, you are really saying that the rate of taxation is 500%. And there is no permissible rate in GST beyond 40%.
Thank you.
One, it's a distortion on value, but indirectly, it's also a distortion on rate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shah. In the last episode also, you explained this issue lucidly from the GST point. This time you also spoke about the game of skill and the game of chance issue, and then explained the GST. We will request your time again soon after the GST Council meeting, in which the GST issue will be deliberated. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.